Hey, how's it going? So, I have a little something I put together tonight that I think anyone who has an affinity for music might find interesting. I was inspired. So, let's see what we have in the notes. What's going on? How you been? I'm excited about tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to be big deal. Good stuff. Let me just give you a quick little... what was that? What is going on? So, there's this debate been floating around for a couple centuries related to what should the frequency be of A above middle C, right? Should it be 440? Should it be this 432 mystical, magical, heal all your energies number? Maybe it's something even different than that. We'll find out. We're going to put it to the test. And look at kind of some of the ins and outs of what that number even means. And how we can sort of tell. Like, what are some of the ways that we can investigate this number and see if it's there's anything to it. Lauren, how's it going? Good to see you. Music is just... color at a different frequency, right? If our ears could tune to a higher frequency, we would see it, right? But that said, though, so there's something to that, because we take in our world visually, we take in our world, vibrationally, in all these different ways, and we kind of think that the senses are reporting different information, but they really aren't. They're just showing us a different part of that same thing, right? So if we can master one, and if we had some type of guide that would maybe put those pieces together for us, and that'll really give us some ideas, right? So, as an example, the color that's on this card here, it's a Kabbalistic tree of life, and these colors, it's almost as if the order means something. It's almost as if the order mattered to the person that was making this, right? And let's assume, for the sake of the conversation, that this order is divinely inspired. If only we had a Rosetta Stone that can help us to understand how to correlate those colors to notes, and maybe give us some insight into chords, give us some insight into harmonies, and some of those deeper secrets, right? Because what's the goal here is, we have this question, everybody has an opinion, and so, far be it from me to not toss my hat into that ring and say, I have an idea. And maybe shed a perspective on which one is appropriate and why, right? So we're going to take a look at that. There's a few things as well that I thought would be really interesting tonight. Listening to your favorite song and what that's all about, right? And we all have our favorite song. I guess depending upon if I'm talking about something with words or something without, my favorite song would be different, but we're going to ask a question about that, and that's going to be a fun question. Seeing yourself through the eyes of the world, that's going to be fun. Seeing yourself through the eyes of the world, what does that mean? He must mean something. Fun with Gematria. Wait till you see what we do with that tonight. Part of it's going to be related to the question of the 440 and 432. I mean, whenever you see numbers, obviously you can do all kinds of shenanigans. And, of course, we know that shenanigans is a very important magical work, because it's within the work of the shenanigans that we find the patterns. And what are patterns but a vocabulary toward the truth, right? Now, the Inner Sanctum stuff's going to be a little interesting today, too. We're going to look at the direct application of the algorithm, so to speak. This idea of every two having a third is a really good idea as a mental exercise, as a psychological exercise, an emotional one, and all these things. But what's the actual practical use for this? And so we're going to look at it from a very basic level, which, of course, we know, whenever you want to talk about really big things, you can only do it using small words. And whenever you want to talk about really small things, you need all kinds of words. It could take a volume like this to describe a basic concept. But when you're trying to describe something as big as, the story of your creation and the creation of the universe, and the conversation of those two things, you can only do it with very simple terms. And so that's how we're going to do it today. We're going to use 4 or 5 words, tops. And that's going to be a lot of fun. And then obviously conversation. Now conversation is a little different this time around because, I'm finding there's a lot of people out there that are setting out to discover their higher self, their inner voice, their child, their holy guardian angel, right? Everyone has their word for it. Well, I've achieved knowledge and conversation of my holy guardian angel, and I figured, while everyone out there is having trouble, you can borrow mine for the night. So while we're here, we'll just converse with the holy guardian angel. And I find that once you've gone through the experience and you have like an empirical understanding at that point, it's a lot easier to just meet with yours finally. So hopefully we can help you on that journey of yours. Because isn't that the goal of the work anyway? That said, I've mentioned many, many times that your soul is always talking, right? And I've spoken openly over the past couple of days what that means, that if you want to hear the sound of your voice, look around. That's your voice talking to you in color, in light. Well, today we're going to talk about the sound of your voice in music. And what we're going to be looking at is a very interesting idea. It's this idea that essentially there's an argument about the frequency of what should be chosen for this note, this sort of special note when deciding the starting point for these ratios, right? And what is that starting point? Well, if you'll notice here on this chart on the left-hand side, this is a bunch of math. Don't be afraid of the math. What we're really referring to here is if you look at a piano or a keyboard or something along those lines that we're all familiar with, and consider how these notes were derived, right? How is it chosen that the sound between this note over there and this note over here, what's the difference, and who makes that decision, right? Like, who decides what that's going to be? And if it was arbitrary, which I'm sure it was for quite some time, it kind of would have been a mess, right? I mean, you were probably the only person that could have used your instrument, and there was no reproducing of the melody and so forth, and probably didn't sound so good. Should have stuck to singing. But instead, we have actually a very simple standard that we use, and we all use the same standard, which is basically we're going to pick a note. In the meantime, right now, what we're going to do is, let's just, for the sake of this conversation, we're going to call this right here middle C, okay? And what we're going to do is that we're going to pick a note, and we're going to assign it to one of these keys on the keyboard. And we're going to say, okay, so from now on, you and I both agree this sound means this note. And so from now on, as long as we agree on that, we at least know if we both go to each other's pianos and we push this key, it's going to sound the same. We can't speak to the ones around it yet, but we'll get there. Okay, so this note right there is middle C. And now the way these work, if you aren't familiar, it's A, B, C, D, E, F, G, but then it goes back to A, right? We don't go past the G in the alphabet. And so what we have here is we have C, D, E, F, G, right? Then we go back to A, B, and then here's the C, right? And then D, E, F, G. Now this right here is an A. And it's kind of a special A. It's just a special A from a catalog perspective. This is the one that we chose as like the starting note for us deciding how are we going to tell the difference between the note sounds. As you can see up here, we have this beautiful system that we use to decide and share our music And there's various methods for you to decide how to learn this process, and every good boy does fine, and your faces and so on. But what we're looking for here is what does this sound like compared to that? How do we know the difference between these two to the ear, and like how many vibrations and so on? So the way that this was developed, there was a pretty smart guy out there. His name was Pythagoras. And what Pythagoras did is he basically came up with the fact that there was this sort of ratio difference was the best way to go about that. And so rather than us going through this exercise of saying, okay, well, we're going to try to figure out what that note is, let's take one in the middle and we'll call it 1, just arbitrary, just for convenience. And the one next to it is going to have a certain ratio difference. And the one from that's going to have a difference. And so no matter how many notes you get and how far you go in this imaginary line of frequencies, the ratios stay the same. It kind of scales, right? No matter how big or small you make this shape, the ratio stays the same. And that's the important point here, so that the notes stay the same. And that said, if you and I agree that that middle note sounds like that C, and you and I agree on those ratios, well, now we're onto something. Now we can actually be confident in the fact that even though I have no idea who built your piano, if they followed my rules, your song will sound the same on mine and yours. My song will sound the same on yours as mine. And that's the point. And that allows for communication. That allows for understanding, for there to be a shared vocabulary. And once you have that, real connection can take place. Music can take place. So it's a very, very simple subject. Miss King, hello. Sumya, thanks for popping in. And now obviously you can go through the exercise. Thankfully we don't have to, because we have a bunch of smarty pantses that did the work for us, to figure out probably the best way to go about that, right? And you'll notice a couple of correlations here. Like this is what's called the perfect fifth, and we'll talk about what that means in a moment. Has a little bit to do with this basic math right here, but we'll get there. And so what these are, you'll notice, is the frequency ratios are really just talking about what's that number divided by that other number, and that gives us this integer of how much difference between the note prior and the note forward. Okay? Sounds good. But now what does all that mean? Without getting into the technicalities of it, what it means is that how we start that first note means everything. Because if we start that first note that we're calling a 1 on 440, and then we do the division that's listed here on the left-hand side of what these ratios are, then those notes are going to sound one way. But if we decide that that A is a 432 instead, and kind of knock off 8 hertz cycles per second of vibration, and we apply these numbers, then it's going to have a whole different sound. And of course, there's, the different parties that have their evidence as to why that the 432 is appropriate compared to the 440. I wonder what Pythagoras thought. I did a lot of research to try to determine what his opinion was on that, and ultimately his opinion was it's the ratio that matters, right? And so I understand that makes sense. That's why we have this beauty of the harmonics on a guitar at the golden means, right? From the fret to the fret measure, do the 0.6 and the 1.6, and you're going to have the harmonics. Same idea with piano and all these things. So it really is about the ratio to Pythagoras. I don't think he cared about hertz. I don't know if he even considered the world with respect to hertz more than he understood the respect of the relationship between the two notes. And some relationships are sad, and we get these minor kind of sounds, and some relationships are very happy, and they provide this kind of completion, like the of the resolve, or we have this idea of the longing on certain notes where it's begging for that resolve, right? That note right before you land on that major. It's a vocabulary that's actually understood fluently by our emotions, to such a degree that we even speak this language in the womb before we even know what language is. And so there's something to this understanding of the ratios of music, because it gives us direct access to a part of us that we normally have to think about and talk about and read books about and speak to experts about and have arguments about Freudian and Jungian and Mars and Venus and all these things. But the reality is that music reveals to us important things. If you listen to a song and you react a certain way, then consider what that song is speaking, because it's resonating, right? If I hum an F and there's a guitar in your room with an F string, that string's going to vibrate. And so there's some learning that can take place during this process. But of course, as I've spoken many times on the channel here, and it's sort of the basis of my work, it's the first step of all of this. The order matters. And so we better get it right. Is it 440 or 432? I mean, we're talking about singing the song of God. We're talking about singing songs to heal hearts. We're talking about singing songs to know ourselves. Anybody who's had fun of humming a note while there is a friend next to them, humming the harmony and the two voices together, creating that, oof, that feels good. Well, imagine doing that with the universe. Well, you have to know what note it's humming first, and if you do, you can hum the harmony. And guess what? Wow. Try it. So let's figure it out. Right now, the argument is 440. The other argument is 432. I'm not going to get into the why. There's a whole lot of Google out there for you to explore on that. What I want to do is to look at these numbers in a different manner. Well, I'm not here to tell you what's already out there. I'm here to contribute to the conversation. I have two words for you. Gematria. So let's do this. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to take a look at these two numbers, right? So first we have 440, and the other one that we have is 438, or 432. 432. So, notes. There's a couple of ways that you can look at this number, right? The first way we can look at it is just through the pure Gematria. Okay, so let's go to the calculator. The first thing that we're looking at here with respect to the numbers, if we do 432 and we look at the Gematria for 432, let's go ahead and pop the desk up here. Let's go to our trusty dictionary, the Merriam-Webster of your soul, and let's take a look at the number 432 and 440. So first, just not to confuse, the first thing we're going to be looking at here is 432. Okay. Now the way this is working is that we're going to look up the numerical equivalent in the Sefer Sephirot, which is essentially looking at other Hebrew words that have the same numerical value. And where's that determined? Well, as you can see here on the top, as a guide for that, similar to Greek, the Hebrews did not have separate characters for their numbers, right? And so their number one was also their letter A, and so forth. And up there is the legend. And so what you can essentially do is take numbers, look at the numerical value, and compare that to other words that share a numerical value, right? And so in this case, we're looking at the number 432 for this magical, mystical, super duper resonating God frequency that's supposed to replace the 440. And so let's see if there's anything to that. So looking at the book here, what we see here for 432, we have eventide shadows. Eventide shadows, 432. Okay. That's interesting enough, I guess. I don't see anything fun there, right? Not so much. So let's look at 440. Okay. Koyadashio, interesting. Right. The Great Dragon, I like that. Curls, cool. Here's the good one. Irreproachable or perfect. Well, let's take a look at that. This is 440. Irreproachable, perfect, right? Okay, so 440 is irreproachable, perfect. Let's take a look at that. Now, there's some other techniques. We're not stuck just doing Gematria. There's also Notarikon, there's also Temurah, right? So let's take a look at a couple of things here. What we can do is we can do the permutation. So what we were going to do is take 432, and just to clarify the notes here, the number 4 is Dalet, the number 3 is Bet, and the number 2, or excuse me, is Gimel, and number 2 is Bet. So that's DGB, right? Everyone see that? 4 Dalet, 3 Gimel, 2 Bet. Very simple stuff. So we're not going to take those letters and we're going to transpose them. So if it's a D, we look up at the little chart on the top here, and that becomes an R. The 3, which is the Gimel, is going to become a Shin. And then we have the 2, which is normally a Bet, which is now going to become a Tet, right? So you see how that works. So now what that turns, it goes from basically Dalet, Gimel, Bet, which is Dagobah, right? And so 432 is the number of Yoda. That's right. You all heard it here first. It points to the Dagobah system. But all kidding aside, it actually would be pronounced Dagobah, Dagib. But that said, what we have is Resh, Shin, and then Tet, right? And so it's a totally different set of numbers, right? And so if you look at Resh, Shin, Tet, you get 509. So just to be clear, what we do is once we've done the permutation of the 432, it becomes 509 when we do the letters. And so 509 is a different definition. And so let's look up 509. Because 509 is the permutation of the 432. So it's going to give us like the opposite side to maybe give us some insight. It's the word means bridge. Bridge. It has some connotation, I guess, with respect to the structural layout of a song, right? The bridge is an important part of the song with respect to the mechanics of the architecture of the song layout. But you know, the transitions between the different phases, the bridge provides that sort of like a little bit of a break from the phrase so that you long for it, right? If without that break it becomes monotonous, but with that bridge it gives you that kind of, that's that longing, right? And then they give it to you and you get your chorus back, right? But without the bridge, the chorus is meaningless. But let's look at the alternative, right? So we have the idea here of the 400. So if we look at the difference between the 432, which is 4 plus 3 is 7 plus 2 is 9. It's a 9. And if we look at 9, we have Tet. But then if we do the normal 440, we have 8, which is a completely different value as well. And if you're familiar with the Hermetic numerology, you know the difference between 8 and 9 is very profound. And 8 is much more of a holy number. It's sort of that, and even just sort of symbolically, you can see how that would work with respect to music. 8 is the octaves. 8 is the root. All these things. It's just 8 is an obvious number with respect to the idea of the musical scale. And so, it seems more and more that 440 just seems to be working, right, from respect to that. When we do the theosophical reductions as well, we wind up getting, on the 509 side, we get 5. But if we do the theosophical reduction on the 440, which is basically winds up being to 2 haze, which becomes a 10. So but long story short, it winds up at a 4. And so the one is a 5 and the other's a 4. So even then, the 440 lands on a much more divine number than a profane one. The 5 being the profane and the 4 being the divine, right? And when you put the two together, they annihilate to 0. So it all comes down to the more evidence that I look at, even just from a Gematria perspective, just out of the gate, this is all complete games, toys. We are the music makers, and we are the dreamer of dreams. It's good to see you. Thank you for popping in again. And so, just from the purely Gematria, the 440 seems to be winning the argument, right? There's a little bit of math that goes up, that I some additional math that I did, but basically at the end of the day, it's the same idea. And so now let's go back to what I was reviewing before, because there's an interesting idea if you look at the Pythagorean scale and specifically how that can be used to maybe gain some additional insight here. Because what we're looking at on the top part here, now I'm going to refer to this top portion up here, okay? And what we're going to be looking at here is a scale that shows the difference between two things. Basically the common interval based on decimal, right? These are cents. So every 100 cents gives you just an even number, and you'll notice that that's where all these notes are falling. Basically this is the 1. This is the root. In this case, the A 440 or the middle C, whatever you put at that root, but let's just call it C for now, right? And then what we have here is the minor second at 100 cents and so forth, and you'll notice they're falling equal to these points, right? And those are indicated here by the black circles. So there's a black circle. Make this red. You'll see there's a black circle. And then there's a green one that's kind of floating around it, okay? And what that green one is the Pythagorean. Now, the difference here is that Pythagorean uses a slightly different scale because it's using a ratio, and that ratio, ratios are never perfect. They tend toward perfection, right? Like it's similar to pi. It's one of the reasons that we're going to have to continually divide, and even though we have some very different and unique ways to derive pi, we never get to the end because we can only approximate using different clever ratios. Even some very sophisticated algorithms are really just ratios in disguise. They're just complicated ratios. So at the end of the day, there's this idea that the ratio will never truly be exact when we're talking about a common theoretical time of just every 100 cents, right? Every century, every 10. And so that said, you're going to see that deviation appear here with the green circles that are very close to the red ones there, right? And so, but if you'll notice, the green one is on the left side of the common with respect to the time, and now over here it's on the right, and then it goes back to the left, and then it hops back over to the right. So essentially the frequencies are a little bit before, but then in the next note up, it's a little bit late, and then it's a little bit early, and it's a little bit late. And so each note is a little bit before and then after, ping-ponging back and forth with this common interval. And again, just to clarify, the difference between each note and how it sounds. And so it's a little early, it's a little late, and it ping-pongs back and forth. There's this idea of an up and a down, even in the placement of where these notes fall compared to the divine, right? And when you consider that only exists because of the order, meaning that if the 440 were not the case, or if that ratio were different, that would not be the case. And so there's some beautiful things to see here with respect to the fifth and these ratios. So if we review the left side here, which is this big, daunting, but I find very beautiful chart, and we see this 1-1, right? That's the note after the middle C, the D, right? And so it's basically just one step away from a C, but now we start getting into ratios. This is a 3/2, and there's a difference of almost 2. There's a difference of almost 4, right? Almost 6. Now these are very close to Fibonacci numbers, and that's on purpose, and that's a different talk for a different day. But at the end of the day, none of this works if any of these numbers get changed, and the order definitely matters. And what we do see with the 440 is that the ping-ponging, so to speak, of the back and forth tends to produce what's considered to be more melodically beautiful. Now, that's obviously a subjective statement. Some people, well, everybody has different taste in music and what they consider to be beautiful, and that certainly over time changes with each individual as their taste mature or their palate becomes more experienced and they are more open to, those things. And so certainly the first inkle that you should take is listen to the chord in 432, listen to the chord in 440, and see, would this 432 sound better or 440? Your heart knows, right? It'll resonate or not. You're going to go, And now, try not to do this experiment with a familiar piece of music, because along with that familiarity comes expectation, right? And so you're not going to be reacting to the song as much as the difference between the expectation and the reality, which is ironically what we're looking to do here, but not in the same way, right? And so, from the respect of the Gematria, 440 wins. With respect to the mathematics of it, the octave being 220 and 110, right, and 880, there's a beauty to that. There's 88 keys on a standard piano. There's sort of a lot of different mathematical connections that just point to the truth that if you were to change the number, a lot of that doesn't work. It falls apart. Order matters. I remember being a child and looking at the keyboard, and I was always fascinated by this missing space, right? Everyone who's gone through this exercise will know what I mean. Like, what's with that missing space? Why is it 2 and then 3, right? Why isn't there a black key right here? Like, I always felt like I wanted to put one in, because obviously there is a sound there. I mean, make no mistake, it's not like that the keys that we've chosen for a piano are the only keys that exist. There certainly are frequencies in between there, and we can actually go infinitely. There are infinite frequencies in between there just by stretching the decimal point, right? But that doesn't mean that they're beautiful. Infinite number of monkeys with infinite number of typewriters can write an infinite number of books. Most of them are going to be garbage. And so it's the notes that matter, right? There's those ones that ring divine because they fall in line with the math. They fall in line with the rule. They respect the divine order. And those notes, beautifully, wonderfully, there's only 12. The 13th is just the end of the last beginning. And it continues on, just like the story of our creation, right? Which is beautifully depicted in the bottom here, where the red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet goes back into red and starts all over again. And what is the difference between this one, which is the sound of a C, and this one here, which is a C, and that one here is a C? The energy, the enthusiasm, the level of conversation and how deep it is, right? So, whenever you're looking at a question like this, you have to look for the resonance. And you'll know right away. And so we looked at the resonation of the language, and the language points at 440. We look at the idea of how the 440 applies to this idea of the 12 and the idea of the 8 and why that's relevant to the piano. Or that all-important 13, which is the octave, right? That 13th note. Don't forget 13 is half the divine number 26. It's half the. And so at the end of the day, there's something to that. And so my assessment, just from my own work with music, playing piano, singing, and basic understanding of the theory, and my further investigating with the Gematria and with looking at some other things with respect to color and how color and notes apply, and if you consider how those colors change and the harmonies change, you could even visually see that, wait, that doesn't work. The circle of fifths is slightly different in an awkward way under certain circumstances that I'll leave to the music buffs in the room. If you want to have that conversation, that at some point we can. It's pretty complicated, so I won't leave it I'll leave it out of a live stream. But that said, there's something to that. And so if you guys have any questions about that, or have any input, I know that there's a few people that join the stream that have a little bit of experience when it comes to theory. And so I'm curious what your ideas are on that, and what your opinion is. Are you a 432er or a 440? And why? Like, are we just going with it, or have you had the experience? Or do you are you a drop tune on your top string kind of person, or do you go with the low E? And so that's kind of the idea. That's the question. But from that comes a lot of very interesting stuff, right? Asking the question in color is a very interesting question. That's a good. One of the reasons that we can almost guarantee that using the heart test is the best one, because it first of all, it is resonance in its purest form. But it also gives us access to that truth, right? I mean, the whole point is the truth. I mean, what is the best song? They say, I've always read that one of the sweetest sounds you can hear is the sound of your own name being spoken. And there's a truth to that. If you want to see what the power of that, go into a room by yourself, like go into your bathroom when we're done with the stream, shut the door, shut the lights, close your eyes, really, really, and then whisper your name to yourself. That sensation you're getting is what I'm talking about. But that said, though, the idea is that it could provide a little access, because when we listen to our favorite song, even if you were to just talk about your favorite song right now, which right now I'm floating around in between Dream Theater from Systematic Chaos, Ministry of Lost Souls, great song, or Vivaldi's Nisi Dominus Frustra, Com Dietri, by Andreas Scholl, which is the most amazing vocal performance I've heard in probably 15 years. So and I can listen to either of those things just like anytime. And now the beauty is, though, that once I've come to that one truth, I get to know the truth, which is that when I'm in a state of listening, that's me singing. I'm hearing the sound of my own voice perform for me. Like, did you ever want to see your own band and they're performing just for you? Well, go to YouTube and pull it up, because that's literally what's happening. That's right. When you listen to your favorite song, you're listening to the sound of your own voice sing to you. Man, I wish you could know what I know right now, because I get to feel that, and it's awesome. That's the truth told openly. It sounds crazy at first. Your soul is always talking, right? Always. It's never not talking. Isn't that true? I mean, here's this lunatic on the internet telling me, wait a minute, so what you're saying is that I'm not me looking, I'm the thing I'm looking at? Yeah, you're the world, that's right. We got confused. Whoops. The lens got shifted on the way down. Our ego fools us into thinking that that's the case, right? And so, it's persistent. We can even look in a mirror and see a body and go, no, it's a body. I mean, no. You're the thing looking back. When you're in a state of listening, you're the voice you hear. When you're in a state of speaking, the universe is listening. How do I know? Because if I hum an F, your guitar will vibrate. It's listening. Resonance is proof that the universe listens when we speak. But what we forget is that when we're listening, we're the ones speaking. Alrighty. So that said, I wanted to jump to an interesting story that popped into my head today. That I had at the beginning of time, And I've been, I don't know, sitting on it for, I don't know. I guess from our perspective, 13.8, 14 billion. What's the new number? About 14 billion years since you made all this happen. I don't know if you've ever heard this cute little saying, man plans, God laughs. What's another word for man planning? Listening, like waiting for the plan to happen. God laughing, reject. So I wanted to add to that. Man plans, God laughs. Man cries, God hugs. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to, it's been a little while since I pulled it out and really got into it. I'm going to pull out the deck that I created. And what is the purpose of that deck? To show the correlation between the tarot, this beautiful gift we've been given of the tarot. Oh, I love that. You don't play music, you are the music. That's right. And the point there is, recognize which side of that you're on while it's happening. If you're fortunate enough to have the comfort or the skill to separate from the performance physically and be able to listen to it while you're playing, you get to kind of just sit back and listen. But you have to recognize that you're the one playing, not the one listening. The universe is listening because you're in a state of speaking. When you're a performer, you may think you're listening to the sound of you play the music, but you're not. You're speaking. You're not in an active listening. You're in an active speaking, and it's actually very profound because it's that's like your will being directed perfectly. When you're in the pocket, I always slip on F sharp. I always slip down to the F on. There's one chord that's a trip from C to and then C, D, E, and then it goes up to an E, F sharp, A. And anyway, but long story, I always slip on my middle finger. It's probably not using the same finger, but I always slip on that note every time. And every once in a while, I nail it when it matters. And that moment feels great because I'm here, I'm listening, and then I recognize after the fact, like, oh, I didn't slip on that. But no, yeah, you're the one that's, you're the one playing. The only hard part is to organize the measurements we mutually agreed and execute them with precision. Well, that's the key, sure. The precision part actually is mostly getting out of our own way. How much of the performance is affected by nerves and by expectation? And expectation is a product of identity. Performance is a product of identity. You put the work in. You know your body knows the notes. You did your kata. It's time to put the blindfold on and zen that shit, right? And if you're able to do that, you're going to have that beautiful moment of being able to listen and speak at the same time, my brother. And, something tells me you've done it once or twice in your life. I bet you that Wendy has too. There may be some people here, if you've played music, you're going to have this idea of those times where you were in that place of speaking and listening at the same time. And in that moment, guess what? There's no room for thought. Your body's busy. Your mind's busy. You are literally you in that moment. That's one of those beautiful moments where women get it too, that we're so weak. You know what women get to do? Give birth. There's nothing else but giving birth at that moment. So they actually know that. For that short period of time, that's you. You are nothing but that pain. You are nothing but that release when the baby's out. You're nothing but that joy. And then you look back intellectually at it and go, holy crap, that was insane. Like, I can't believe what I did. And, but during it, just not thinking. There's no thought. So it's a beautiful moment if you're a musician and you have the ability to listen and play at the same time, because that's literally what the goal of this work is. True. And, well, again, expectation is the mother of disappointment. And it's a matter of letting go of expectation and letting the song be what it is. and find its perfection. And so, technique is an important process, of course. Truth, right? That's one of the reasons a few people have told me that I probably benefited from not learning to read. I disagree with that. I think, well, maybe I did because I have such an organic understanding of my relationship to where the sound is, and it has nothing to do with my eyes. Like I can it's sort of organic. But now being able to translate that from dots into position is going to be an interesting thing as an adult, because I don't read and I'm planning on learning. I heard somebody has a cool technique that can help me. I don't know, we'll see. Put it to the test. But so that said, that's going to be an interesting connection. But that's kind of what we're doing here. We have this intuitive understanding of our place in the universe, of how we perceive it, of our definitions and our identity. And now here we are, starting from fresh, but with new eyes. Don't you wish you could start over and be a child with everything you know? Well, you now have the opportunity to do that. We're doing it now. So we get to look back and with new eyes and realize, wait a minute. And what I'm talking about is the eyes of this book, the eyes of this desk looking at you, the eyes of the light that's shining into your presence, because that's who's looking. You know how I know that the universe is listening? Because I'm talking. And when I'm not talking, I hear the sound of my voice, and it sounds like a beat, and like a lo-fi Latin guitar. That's my voice talking when I'm not. That beat too, that's a really slow beat. It's pretty close to 72, which is the resting human heart rate, right? But so that said, this is one of those like really, really important subjects that if you want to delve into, it's gonna give you all kinds of fun access, because once you kind of understand just the basic concept of this rainbow on the bottom, the C is red, which means the next C is also red, and that scale just stretches in between. And so if you wanted to know the sound of purple, what do you got to do? Find that in between, right? And so if you want to know the sound of purple, you go to your keyboard or your piano or your DAW or whatever software you're using, and it's probably going to be this here and this here. Hit those two and you're going to hear that beautiful harmony in between, right? You want to know what cyan sounds like? You can be boring and hit cyan, which is probably this, right? Or you can be cool about it and look for that middle, like find that harmony. Or is it here, right? But find that middle, and then this one's going to kind of ring. Don't press it, but listen for it, because it's speaking. And then you'll know what that color is. You'll be able to hear cyan. And we've all been there as kids. Yellow and blue make green. Just think about the next time you're trying to do cupcakes. Imagine making cupcakes and the color of the sound of somebody's birthday. Do the birthday, do the Gematria. It spells a word. That word is spoken. That spoken word has a certain frequency in the letters, B, D, G. Overlay it. Put the colors together. You have a tone for the cupcake, which is the sound of their birthday being spoken. There's a lot of fun ways that can be approached by adding layers of entropy to the process, right? That said, imagine what this sounds like. This is the universe card, and Crowley utilized that system of colors and music on purpose to elicit responses. All right. Beautiful stuff. And just think about that. Every sense has a spectrum, and so, what does an A minor taste like? Jack cheese. Sorry. Keep it light. We're not in the inner order yet. Once we're in the inner order, we got to take stuff seriously and the names change. But for right now, Lauren is Lauren. For right now, Uncle's Uncle. And you are the dreamer of dreams. Who? You. You're the dreamer. So that said, the next subject is going to get a little kind of interesting, and so I'm going to take a quick minute to heat my coffee up. If you want, what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave this up. For the people in the room that are musically inclined, just, take a look at what we're kind of getting at here and consider, just meditate on the image. And think about what we're talking about, right? The differences in the colors. And now consider the implication of potentially applying color to time also. Because right now we're just applying color to pitch. So all kinds of fun. All kinds of fun. It really says something about some of the older melodies that have stood the test of time, and maybe we can do some Gematria on the notes at some point. But that said, I just need a couple minutes to heat up the coffee, and I'll be right back. Alrighty. So I thought I would do a couple of cute things tonight. There's a couple of decks that I wanted to look at, right? We've been looking at a few decks and kind of putting them through the test, and there's a few in particular that I thought would be interesting. And so I chose a couple that are all very unique, but the approach as each one has a totally different symbol system. It might be a little hard at first to decide if is there something there or not, right? And so let's look at these couple of decks. Some of these you may be familiar with or may not. If you are, let me know. And what we're going to be looking at is, do they tell the story? Do they point to that one truth? Because if they do, then we know we've got a good deck on our hands. And if they don't, then maybe we have a really nice art piece, right? This is the Byzantine Tarot. And the Byzantine Tarot is very indicative of that kind of Christian mysticism, which is very interesting. And you'll see that indicative of the artwork has sort of an iconic vibe. The cups are all blue, which is interesting. So you'll see that you can very quickly and easily spread the deck and get a vibe right away for what elements are where, and you know, you can really get a good sense of the colors, and it's kind of pretty from that respect. Let's look at the back. And 4 angels on the corners, but that could just be symmetry. I haven't done the exercise of counting the dots. I will, because I'm that person. But okay, we have a motif of 5 and 5, and then 4 and 4. So that's 8 and 10. We also have that down here, 10, 10. It's here, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11. So this is 22 and 22. That's interesting. Okay, so there's some, you know, could be stretching. There's some mathematics on the back. Right, we have the 4 in the middle. I don't know. There's maybe the idea of the cup upside down pouring in. Maybe. I don't know. I think I'm stretching. Let's see. Interesting. He's wearing the black, which is very indicative of the Western Orthodox system. Interestingly, he's also wearing yellow, which is the color of mind. The cup is yellow. That's a yellow cup. The sword is pointed down. Why does that matter, Michael? Let's go to the deck. The question is, and I make the bold assertion that my deck is in fact in the divine order, therefore the story is accurate and can be used as a key to unlock any system. So let's use the deck to see if this is telling that story. So far, I see some good evidence. Well then, what we have here is the order changing, right? The original order of the tarot, as we know, is wand, cup, sword, pentacle, but we now know, due to the divine vortex, that changes on the top, but only in the middle. These are pinned due to the pillars, the outer pillars, and so we have the sword and the cup, and that sword winds up upside down. so we have the upside down sword, and we have a yellow cup. Now, of course, cup in yellow, sure, we always have this indication of cups being like metallic and gold for some reason, although they were mostly ceramic or stone, but whatever. Let's assume, okay, it's a gold cup. It does appear ornate, perhaps on the card. You know, he has the idea of the halo of divine mind. He's wearing yellow, and very interestingly, too, as well, he's in a magic circle, right? So sort of the John Dee kind of vibe, right? And here's my John Dee. If you'll notice, he has a new crown on his head. You know what that crown is? This is a ring that I wear sometimes on my pinky. I usually wear it here. Right now I have the three individual stones, but right? And what it is the heart. It's just a heart, just a cute little heart ring, right? It's a piece of costume jewelry. Turns my finger blue every time I wear it. But I thought it'd be interesting to put an upside down heart on his head, don't you think? I think it's a good look for him. So you'll get the idea here too, right? It's just an interesting idea. That's a maybe. I don't know. Maybe I'm stretching. I'm curious what you guys think. You know, for all I know, I'm the only one. And you're all just watching a beautiful little mental breakdown. So let's look at 6 of staffs. We know this card, right? The victory card. Look at them throwing the roses because they've earned it. I'm going to leave that there as the maybe. The 2 of Wand. I see some tarot stuff here. Interesting. They have an infinity symbol in the grips. As if infinity is being used to hold the work being done. Beautiful symbolism. But does it tell the story? Let's see. Let's find out. The Ace of Staff. Let's just leave that one aside here. You get the idea, though. Beautiful art. It was another one of these that I had to kind of give it a chance, and then it became a very powerful read. The Countess of Sword. Let's see if we can bump into some majors. Ah, the Tower. Now, this is an interesting individual that they chose, right? Let's see if anybody can pick out who this person is. 10 points for the person that gives me this one person's name. No cheating. Actually, I don't know if the name is out there. I believe this is a certain individual. But look at that. Look at that tower. Huh? With the serpent. I've told that story many times. And what's the indication here? Not only is the tower crumble, but the serpent goes with it. Kind of beautiful symbolism there. I believe that is a specific person that's a mystic. And I'll give everyone a minute to think about it. And then I'll talk about it. Let's see if we can bump into any other majors here. There's that 9 of Swords, right? Well, actually, let's look at a court card. The Countess of Coin. Now, I'm not sure what that means, Countess, so let's find out. Let's find another green. That's the 9. There's the Ace. So let's look at the Ace there. Oh, the Hermit. I definitely want to look at the Hermit. The Wheel. These are good. Oh yeah. See, they call this is their universe card, so that's a goodie. We'll look at the Moon. The Holy Fool, El Diablo. Okay, there's some goodies. So, and let's just get another green court. The Page. So the Countess is clearly the Queen. All right, so let's just get a little quick sampling here. There's the Wheel. There's the Fool. Okay, good. So this is a quick way to take a look at this deck now. We'll know right away. Is this just Christian iconography, or are we looking at the story? So here's the page, and what do we know what the page does? The page comes, also known as the princess, to bestow the element upon the earth, the seat of the ace, according to the Rosicrucians. I'm sorry, the throne of the ace. The page refers to the earthy part of the element, so the earthy part of earth, the idea of physically manifesting. And what are they manifesting? This. This is the blueprint before it becomes physically manifest, right? It's not actually in the world yet. It's being offered. I'm thinking that that's Nebuchadnezzar. Could be wrong. And here we have the queen. Now, I know the Queen of Disc very well because she lives in my birth reading. She's my queen. And so I know her very well. She is my consort. She is my soul. Okay, so let's take a look here. The animals on her shawl are kind of hard to see. Let's look at the devil. We have the man and the woman hiding behind the feet. Has a Medusa kind of looking head. Those are serpents. The numbering is the same. It's a 15. But I don't see the devil from the respect of the normal idea of the Baphomet, the as below, so above. There is this idea here. Which is interesting. Pretty typical. Interesting that they chose the Fool as nude. Usually it's the universe. Pretty. I like that. I like the border. There's a lot of motion. You know, you see the waves of the idea of the moon causing a tide. The universe, the world, the cosmos. Wow. The seraphim. Obviously, he's seated in a vagina, right? That's the Vesica Pisces. And what is a Vesica Pisces? Right? The Vesica Pisces is really nothing more than two interlocking circles. Right? And that space in between is the Vesica. Now, this ratio of the height of that to the width matters. And the divine is the 1.6, right? Or the phi, or phi, depending upon if it's the 1.6 or the reciprocal of 0.6. Right. And that's we're gonna have that conversation one day, and it's gonna be a heavy one. But the idea here is that shape is actually relevant because it's the idea of the two circles, and the space in between is the only thing that actually exists. And if you were to take two spheres and go about this process, I've done it in like Blender or other 3D programs, the shape that's created is actually kind of like a teardrop, right? It's a beautiful shape, and that's the shape of the Merkaba's field, right? It's quite beautiful, actually. And you know the Merkaba, right? That's the idea. That Merkaba spinning creates that shaped field. Just ask my holy guardian angel. Listen to him. Trust me, he knows. So, interesting symbolism here. And also they chose the angels. And the angels are holding the suits. Now I just want to, that might be a little hard to see here. That's a cup. That's a sword. The sword, or that's the staff rather. No, that's a sword. Pointed down. That's a downward pointing sword. We have a pentacle, and then we have the wand. You know, the wand and the pentacle on the bottom, the feminine energy, so to speak, on the corners, and then the masculine energy, so to speak, right here. We know my opinion on that. Okay. The wheel. What do you think? Well, let's see. There's 3 people on top. The 3 mother letters. Inside we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people. And the one on the bottom, 7. So this could be the 7 planets, right? This is interesting. Let's just count the spokes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 spokes. But 6 people. 7 spokes, but 6 people. There's also a very, very specifically drawn shape. You can see it. There's a lighter color that's in, it looks like a hexagonal pattern, but that implies that there would be probably, so it looks like a stop sign. There's an octagon implied around this space here, that this person who's holding the wheel up is standing on, and then they're on top there, or, you know, so that's interesting too. I don't know. Here's the hermit going into the darkness. Looks like that's a hexagram in there. From my perspective, it's too bright on the camera. It's not picking it up properly. But it looks like it might be a hexagram. It's a definite maybe. So this deck is a definite maybe. Or is it just the fact that the Christian iconography is just indicative of this story because it was derived from it, right? That's obviously the option there as well. So let's take a look now. This is a really interesting deck. Let me get the name right. This is, I think, Oppositions, the deck of Oppositions. Yeah, the Tarot of Oppositions. And what this is, they the artist or the deck creator went full on reverse meaning. So what they did is, and here's the back. And you'll notice there is a darker tone to one side of the sun, right? The one side is a little lighter and the bottom's a bit darker. That's actually intentionally designed into the art. Very glossy. These are 8 pointed stars, okay. And we've got this interesting kind of vibe here of the gravity of the moon going in and so forth. Interesting art. But what they did with the cards is the top of the card is the upper meaning, and they actually just drew a whole different scene for the reverse meaning. And so this is the 9 of Wands, and this is the upper meaning for the 9 of Wands. And this is the reverse meaning. And so there's a very interesting kind of idea here. And now the art in the middle is kind of indicative of the scene. And you'll see that as we go through these. Okay, so you understand the methodology of the artist, right? So the 3 of Pentacle. Or the 6 rather. Interesting. The Empress. The art's quite lovely. I've never read with this, by the way. This was part of a project that I was putting together for education. Missy, how you doing? And so you'll see the difference here. Here's the Chariot upright. Very active, right? But is it telling the story? I mean, we do have the light of, you know, and there's the direction there. And let's take a look at the reverse version. He's looking backward. There's stuff, there's adversity coming from the front, right? And they're all armored up. Hello, Cloud9. Thank you for popping in. Or Cloud9's mama. When did you change your name? This is the Hierophant. It is. And you know, some of the cards are pulled off pretty good and some, whatever the case. This is neat how the robe is one robe. That's how they chose to choose how to depict the transition. Okay, let's find some interesting cards here. Queen of Sword. 5 of Pentacle. High Priestess, that's going to be a biggie. The Fool, that's going to be a biggie. The Wheel. 10 of Wand, that's big to some people. I'm one of them. Let's see here. 7 of Cup. Wow. Neat. Ace of Sword. Oh, how great is that? That's good stuff. I don't know. That's something about that card is powerful. Man, that's good stuff. I like that one. I'm going to put that aside as a maybe. Anyway, so let's see. Any other goodies? Ace of Wand. Justice. Here's the Tower. Wow, okay. Lightning and fire. One is lightning, one is fire. They both are destruction. That's neat. Okay. So, yeah, all right. Let's take a look at a couple of these. Here's the Death. Always got to take a look at that one, right? Lovers. That's a biggie. The Temptation one. The Star. Oh, that's an interesting idea. Oh, wow. Like a barren wasteland. I have to think about that, which is because this one's feeding it. This is neat. I'm going to look at that one. All right, let's just take a look at these. Okay, because we got a nice little pile going here, but let's do it. This is neat because the energy, like you've got on the lower side, it's kind of like a foggy liquid. It doesn't really look like liquid. It looks like fog, right? But then on the positive side, she's out there. There's a joyous kind of sensation. She's clearly casting light, right? Like, and the stuff that's being poured down into the ground is actually filling this space. So this is a really cool card with respect to the story. Wouldn't you guys agree? The Lovers. Okay, so we know this one. Whoa, that's a very cool image. Love that. The Red Wings. All right, there's the Serpent and the Apple, and she's... Oh, look at this. She's like handing it down to Adam. This is totally the story right here. Yeah, this is another definite maybe. Death. Oh, look what's on the flag. Are there any Pixie fans in the room? That's just taken right from the Rider-Waite as a homage. Look at the sunlight. It's actually done so well that it actually looks bright. Like it's... Let's look at the reverse. I don't do reverse meanings. That's why I'm so intrigued by this. Oh, look at that. He's sort of knee-deep in the snow. Beautiful. Here he's looking at you. Here he's looking away from you. All right, interesting. broken cups. Wow, yeah. Ten of Wand. Oh, so good. Look at this card. Doing great. I got this, no problem. No, I can sustain this. Yeah, I can carry this forever. Okay, well, maybe not so much. Maybe I should have listened to myself when it was getting too hard. Right. The Wheel. Beautiful. Oh, I love that image. Ooh, they have the Rota. R-O-T-A for tarot. T-A-R-O. Rota. Torah. Ator. All kinds of magic in there. Beautiful. So they went alchemical, but they also went Kabbalistic. Very neat. The Fool. Okay, so we have a very traditional looking rider kind of vibe, right? Only it's a bird. There's the rose. The satchel. There's some stuff here. Yellow pants. Funny, yeah, the pet has changed to a weasel. And the clothing is a little more, I don't know. Empress. It is. It's different. It's neat. You can spend some time on it. I've never read with it, so maybe we'll do a reading with it tonight and see how it goes. The last one that I'm going to be showing is a very definitively feminine energy. And you'll know what I mean when I show it. It's a goddess deck. It's an older goddess deck. And, you know, the question of does it tell the story is really neat when you look at the card back. Like, I wonder if she was thinking something when she made this deck. Let's get the name right. This is the Barbara Walker Tarot. It's toward the bottom, or middle on the red side. Barbara Walker Tarot. This is a mini version. Very popular deck from the 70s, 80s. The reason that I bought this deck was because I found it to have a very liminal quality and with respect to the artwork, and I'm a fan of that genre of sensation. And so the reason I bought this was for the Fool card, which I'm going to flip through and find so you can have the same experience with me. And there's a tone about her art that is very, very strange, and I don't know how to describe the sensation. But so you'll share it with me and see what you feel. There's the Magician. And let's find the Fool. There's an eerie quality that is actually unnerving about the Fool card, and but I thought it would be interesting to share this. Her images are actually frightening in a strange way, because you wouldn't think that when you first kind of flip through the cards. Where's the Fool? Sorry, almost. Here we go. There's something about this card that just creeps me out. So let's begin with the Fool. Maybe it's the smile on his face. I don't know. There's just something about it that's really kind of unnerving. Oh, okay, cool. Makes sense. So something about that. Now, interesting that it's a black dog instead of the typical white dog, which I thought was really neat. I like that change. There's the John D. in his magic circle, holding an ankh. This is as below, so above. Here's the magician. Okay, he's wearing the infinity symbol for a hat with a triangle pointed down like a cup, an upside down cup into infinity on it as his hat. So that's a decent symbol. The sword is pointed down. It's a red cup. That's an interesting choice. And he's holding a red wand. Now, the triangle for his head is upside down, and the triangle on his chest is right side up, meaning like the cup. Interesting choice. Okay. That's a maybe, right? Now, these are goddess names, and anyone who'd like to can go look up the story of that individual goddess, because essentially the way that she's picking this is that she's choosing them based on the story of the particular goddess and how it relates to that card. So she has her own kind of system, so I won't get into the idea of her system. However, say that the sword's pointed down, right? Wow. This is what everybody who decides to join a magical order thinks is going to happen to them during their initiation. One day I'll tell the story of my Masonic entered apprentice initiation, which they played a little prank. And it's a fun story I'll tell one day. Oh, wow. This is great. The Two of Wands. Look what they did. Perfect. Gorgeous. Right? They showed that androgynous nature. Right? With the sun and the moon. Like just this really, she did a good job there. She really... Yeah, there it is. Has that kind of old fantasy kind of vibe. This is interesting too, though, because don't forget who's in this. Is this supposed to be a separate person? Of course not. This is just indicative of the fact that the reflection is, being fooled. The wheel. Yes, yeah. Cloud 9 is Brianna. She said one too many things to somebody and had her account banned. So now she's flipping into her, I'm kidding, I have no reason to believe that that's true. That's not true. Brianna wouldn't do that. She's an angel. Very interesting. They did stick with the alchemical symbol, right, in the shape. The towers in the back are neat. There is a willfulness about it, right? Like this person doesn't seem like they're distressed. The Six of Swords. Prince of Wand. So this deck's a little different, but I'm not sure if it's telling the story necessarily, unless you had an indicative, like a little white book that would help us. But this is, which it did come with one, but this is, these are specific goddess stories. It's a very, very mythologically based deck, and so it's very good for people who have a connection to mythology. Love that. Wow, oh, it's the Willendorf goddess. That's what the oldest sculpture ever found. Made by a human. That we know of. I mean, that's that we found. It's not the oldest. know, we were put on this earth to make an impact. If you don't raise a few eyebrows, you're missing the point. There's that sword pointed down again. There he is. Oh, look at him with the caduceus. How many turns? 1, 2.5. Yep. How do you like that? Yama. Slaying of the bull. Alright, this is a traditional world card, right? The nude female dancer with the two wands, which are the unification of the two wills. You know, we have the signs. This is the new Scorpio, right? The eagle. The angel for Aquarius. And then obviously Leo and Taurus. Yeah, there is a surrealist quality, and there's also a very kind of diorama quality. Like everything is in your face and in like 2 or 3 layers of like a dioramic kind of vibe. So it's a surrealist dioramic kind of, I don't know, there's this liminal, which, you know, typically you don't see human figures in liminal artwork, but I mean, look at that. Doesn't that have a dioramic vibe, like a kid who put a project together inside of a shoebox? Oh, look at that. Yeah, so you get the idea here, right? Wow. And her cups typically are spilling blood or milk, right? Wow, this guy's in trouble. You mess with the wrong group of girls, man. Alright, there's the Baphomet, as above, so below. The Alpha and the Omega. The Maid, Mother, and Crone. So yeah, I don't know, maybe. Clearly she had some experience in low magic for sure, and there are indications of Western stuff in here. Opposition. I like that. That's cool. But yeah, so this is an I'm not sure. I don't know. What do you guys think? Surrealist Tarot, by the way, too, is a deck that I'm gonna. Oh, what's this one? Spinny things that are cool, especially shiny purple spinny things. We're gonna do the Surrealist Tarot also in a couple days and take a look at that too, because that's really something. Oh, well, look at this. Yabulan. Okay. So yeah. Good stuff. Ooh, wow, that's scary, huh? One party deck. For sure. Childhood. So you get the idea. Interesting deck. Somebody out there is going to wind up with it very soon. The Two of Swords. Seclusion. Charity. And then there's So, I don't know. I mean, I would say that the Tarot of Oppositions definitely has that vibe, and it almost can't not, because it's the way it's designed. It's almost like, you know, The Byzantine too, I feel pretty good about. I would say that the Barbara Walker, not so sure, but I think part of that is because it's a personal journey through her understanding of the goddess. Mythologies, and so it's you're going to see it in there, scattered throughout, but it seems like on the surface it's a very personal interpretation. So we could find the stories, but we would have to go through each card, look up the story of Kali, and then we'll see the story of Kali in here, right? Or we'll see the story of those different goddesses and those different feminine energies that she referenced in the artwork there. But those first two seemed pretty good. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the dude abides. So, yeah, I feel pretty good about two of those three that we looked at, right? Wow. And there's if you consider the idea of like the genre of the artwork and what it kind of points back to, it's this middle period between the end of the 60s, where it was kind of new, and into a period of time where it was almost becoming so last year, and so she came up with this completely different vibe of saying, oh, well, I'm going to do this like divine feminine that's like unapologetically adult and unapologetically vulgar, and it was very popular at the time and then fell off, and I'm surprised to see people who have no familiarity with the deck at all, because it did have a strong run when it first came out, but strange. And now as we're going into, it's funny, as we are moving toward a more feminine energy, we're experimenting with that. Meaning that as a society, the media that we create around that transition seems to be a little weird at first, where some of it is us sort of parroting the current period, but with a feminine face, and that's not divine feminine energy, right? So she's an example of somebody who said, oh no, well, unapologetically, that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to sell you on anything. This is what we are. At least that's my interpretation as a man looking at what she created. And I think she did a good job at that, Yeah, it's just to clarify then, because you can look up and get good sized images of it. The Barbara Walker Tarot, it's in the middle. It came in a little metal tin. But it's the Barbara Walker Tarot. Okay. Oh, very cool. Neat. It does sort of have that like mid-70s occult vibe, Okay. I don't know, I'd say two of them fit. I shall read to you from Zohar. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Inner Order. If you aren't a member, it's time to be invited. Welcome to the Order. Okay, so what we're going to be talking about today is all kinds of fun stuff, because the goal here is to discover this truth, right? A truth that we all know, that we don't realize that we've always known. And one of the ways to do that is to tell the story multiple ways. The same way that I talked about resonance, right? It's the same idea. There's different parts of us that react to different stories. And so first we told the story of sound and of light, right? And then we told the story of mathematics, which is similar from a certain degree. It's the idea of the difference. It's the idea of the measure in between. You know, because of course it's not in the thing itself, it's in the transitions, right? It's the vortex shows us the truth because it's those counter-rotating forces that create the vortexes in between. The transitions in between is where things happen. And so this is a very important book for those who want to take a look at the core of where this information came from. And so, thankfully, we have a couple of individuals who have gone through this, the process for the sake of the authenticity of the art. Now, you can get a lot of information related to Talmud, to Zohar, to Sefer Yetzirah, to Kabbalah. It's very important that you consider the lineage. And this particular copy is from Rav Michael Leitman, and that's the name you're looking for. Okay. If you're looking for any books related to Kabbalah, you're going to want to see this symbol right here of the black tree on top with the white on the bottom inside of the black and white, right? And you're going to want to look for the for Kabbalah.info. That's a great website too if you want to take a little bit of a further look. But that said, it doesn't matter what you're looking at, because some of the interpretation is just wholly inappropriate if it's not done from the right place. And these are the people who have been holding this information for thousands of years verbally, through in secret, to then finally have come to the conclusion recently that the time had come and it's being shared openly now. And so, yeah. Which name? Yeah, I'm not sure. So this said, or do you mean the name Zohar, or do you name, because there's, you know, each book has kind of a different idea. Like Kabbalah means the reception, or splendor, you know, the book of splendor, the book of formation, and these types of things. And what they're really ultimately referring to are the four worlds, right? We're in the world of physical form. But so that said, though, there's typically little commentaries that are floated throughout the book that point to the truth, and they're a good way to kind of get maybe a perspective you hadn't considered. Because some of the language is so technical with respect to the Hebrew that it's almost inaccessible. Depending upon the source, it can either mean brilliance, which can be misinterpreted as light, like the Book of Brilliance. I would say that you're going to want to look at a couple of different polyglot definitions of the word and then kind of come to your own conclusion about what the word Zohar means. Let's take a look at what the standard, like sort of textbook Hebrew definition is. And we'll do the Gematria in a minute, because why not? It means splendor, yeah, or radiance. Yeah, splendor or radiance. So, and this is a biggie. So just kind of let this ring. Don't forget, when we're approaching information like this, take it in emotionally first. Don't try to parse the words. Just feel them. Later on, we're going to go over it mentally anyway. So the reception for the Creator's sake means that although man fervently wishes to receive pleasure, he receives not because he wishes to enjoy, but only because the bestowing Creator wishes him to receive it. And had the Creator not wished it so, man would not have desire to receive from him. Reception for the Creator's sake is equivalent of selfless bestowal. Thus, the egoistic, impure force cannot cling to such a desire. Pardon. I love dark coffee. The reception for the Creator's sake, why does God bestow? Because that's all He can do. The reception for the Creator's sake means that although man fervently wishes to receive pleasure, he receives not because he wishes to, but only because of the bestowing Creator wishes him to receive it. There's no other reason that the world gives than the fact that the world wants to give. I mean, you figure it out. You're the one who's doing it. But so that said, God, or the divine mind, or the higher self, or the universe, these are all same word, or different words for the same idea, but the same energy, decided to. That's why. Had a thought experiment. And had the Creator not wished to, man would have no desire to receive from him. That's just kind of the idea of if there's nothing being spoken, there's nothing to listen to. If you're not in a state of listening, there is no sound that'll be heard. Even if it's screaming at you constantly at all times from every direction, in every sense, we won't hear it because we're in a state of rejection as opposed to listening. Who's listening? Not you. You're the one talking. If you're in a state of listening, the voice you hear is yours. Reception for the Creator's sake is equivalent of selfless bestowal. Recognize who you are and just listen. And what are you listening to? Your own voice. Do that for the sake of allowing the universe to be heard. It'll return the favor when you speak. Thus, the egoistic, impure force cannot cling to such a desire. Now, on this page, accidentally, I just decided to read over here. And there was just some stuff that kind of popped up in the conversation that I wasn't expecting. Basically, he's asking a question about fear. And now I covered this a couple of days ago in a video called The Transformation of Fear. Let's find the spot that I was looking at here. And yet, Abraham's entire correction consisted in the creation of a perfect, bestowing Kli. The Kli is the cup. It's the vessel, which only consisted of divine mind. There is no way of corrupting its properties or introducing imperfections within it, for just like Abraham's property of mercy, this Kli consisted only of the will to bestow and please the Creator. For as it is written, mine is yours and yours is yours, designates the property of mercy. What this is getting at is that it's the idea of we cannot bestow. And yet that's our compulsion once we get on the spiritual path, and that there is a secret, and that secret is to give by receiving. And when we give by receiving, what we do is we create what they call the perfected Kli, which is the perfect cup. It's essentially always in a cup of being filled and also nourishing at the same time. So it fills and is being filled. Okay, and here's an example of that. I revealed this as far as the key to the sanctum. This is the secret for crafting the key, right? And what we see here is the idea of, there we go, is the idea of the cup is always filled and is constantly in a state of filling this up, right? These two are always in this state of completely filling each other. And what happens in this circumstance here is that we have this exchange. On the normal lower world, we're receiving divine mind into the heart, and we're receiving divine heart onto our minds, right? But what we have in this circumstance is the idea of divine mind becoming ours, divine heart becoming ours, and so that filling, that conversation is constant. And then our body sacrifices to the higher and is replaced with divine will, and we sacrifice our will into divine body, and these two become the same thing, which is a constantly filling cup and a constantly filling divine intelligence that's unified. And so it just self-fills. Now, during this process, what that means is that you have a new will. What that new will is, if you consider what we're talking about here, what that new will is it is the body. What the new body is that it is the will. And all you're actually left with is this sort of like middle pillar. Like you have these outside pillars that initially kept everything together but swapped those ones in the middle. But the reverse is true when you're in the opposite state, right? And so the ones in the middle wind up staying and the ones on the outside move. There's like, it's as if there's this pillar in the middle that stops them from swapping, all right? And what the gist of that is, what the gist of that story is this idea that if we walk around with an empty cup, it's a lie. We think the cup's empty because it's literally always being filled. We just have to decide what it is that we allow it to be filled by. And normally, unfortunately, we allow it to be filled by our ego, which our ego is that thing that helps to fool us into thinking that we're the ones listening. We're not the ones listening, we're the ones talking. Always. Your soul is always talking to you, always, every moment, from every direction, in every sense. I don't think it's that hard. I'm talking and listening at the same time. That's it. So, my notes. I have notes. Let's take a look at that. This will be brief, but powerful. So, we're going to look at the elements. And the elements, or the aces, they're not aces, but they're the aces. Is basically a map of the human psychological system, right? And so we're going to look at, instead of the suits themselves, we're going to look at the aces. Okay. Who's that? That's your baby picture. You are so cute. Look at little you. I know. What do you want me to do? This is what belief looks like, people. All right, so here's the deal. Each one of these is a different circumstance of our conversation, right? Reception, bestowal, rejection. And now I said a little cute thing in the beginning here, and let's look at it from this perspective now. Man plans, God laughs. Man cries, God gives. So when we plan, like we're in this state of listening, right? We're waiting, we're looking at the universe, the world around us, and we're waiting for it to respond. Well, that doesn't work. That's not how it works. And so we're probably not going to get what we want if we're just, in this state of, like, absolutely will. And so God rejects. Man plans, God laughs. We cry. We mourn the loss. Right? There's this thing we wanted and we didn't get it. Why do we cry? Disappointment. We wanted it and God said no, and now we're mourning the loss of our desire. It's normal. But there's a greater truth. We need to turn these into tears of acceptance. What are tears of acceptance? Expectation is the mother of disappointment. It's born in us. It's like a part of the brain. It's not who we really are. It's part of the body. Our higher self only expects that we recognize it's speaking, which is us. All our higher self wants us to do is recognize that we are speaking. Just know ourselves. Just know it. We can get there. That's the thing here, is that we're already there. All right. When we're able to do that, when we're able to remember, and instead of just listening with our mind, we listen with our heart. And when we do that, we're released of all of that suffering that comes with thinking that we aren't receiving. We're always receiving. It is always talking. Expectation defines the vocabulary. Like, what are we listening with? What is the vocabulary we're listening with? Because if we're in the state of listening with the vocabulary of the mind, we're not going to hear a thing. We're going to see this and go red, green, turtle, cat. Not me. But if we listen with our heart, then you'll hear the sound of your voice in color everywhere you look. Everywhere. Look around. That's you talking. Once you're done with your crying. Now you could also look at it from this respect first. Man plans. God cries. Why? Because we're speaking instead of hearing. We reject. We start to hear. Now let's look at the algorithm. The algorithm matters, right? Order matters. I've mentioned that before. It's kind of my thing. What can I say? I'm a programmer at heart. So that said, let's look at some of these combinations of this. Every two has a third of the algorithm, right? And so, for instance, I have here, man plans, listening and speaking.